Hello. Today, I'm going to show you how to set up a collection of Magic Table apps on the interactive table. To start with, I'll launch a few sample apps so you can see how it works. These are motion-responsive apps that display interactive animations. You can launch the apps one by one or run them as a playlist. In the playlist, you can choose how the apps are launched. I'm going to show you what my test setup looks like. As you can see, it's a simple setup with two tripods. I won't go into detail about it now. You can read more about it in our help center. We will now go through the process of setting up the interactive table from start to finish. Go to the advanced settings and enable service mode. In service mode, access the Motioncube Player settings to define its operating mode. Please note that you will need to use the Motioncube Beam version, which you can download from our website. We are working with a depth camera. This option is selected by default. Here, we select the interactive table. We tick motion interaction and hand movement. At this stage, we can launch the interactive projection wizard, which I encourage you to do if you have everything connected. If not, you can cancel this process and return to it later. We launch the wizard. Here, we confirm the table option. We select the camera engine we will be using. I use the Orbbec Astra 2 and keep this option enabled. As I've already carried out the calibration before, I'll show you how to do it from scratch. By default, the situation is as you see it now. And by default, you'll see a situation like this. We check the image orientation. You can see that the orientation is rotated here. This is due to the way the camera is mounted above the table. We flip the image vertically and horizontally and see that everything is now fine. We can move on. The next step is to select the interaction area. I'd already done this earlier. I'll now show you how to do it from the start. There are two methods here. The manual approach. We grab and drag the corner of the trapezium so that it fits this corner of the image and do the same for the other corners. As you can see, it's quite fast and simple. Now the interaction area is defined and I could move on. However, I also want to show you how this can be done completely automatically. That's what this auto detection mode is for. We can see that the interaction area has been detected successfully and we can move on. Here we can check that everything is working properly. As you can see, hand motion detection is working correctly. At this stage, we specify the motion detection mode. We have developed several such modes here. They are described in detail in the Help Center. Let's stick with the diff frames mode for detecting motion on the table. This is the basic mode. It works very well. If you encounter any issues with this mode, you can switch to mixed mode. Alternatively, there's wide range mode, which is a safe option. However, it may lose track of fingers on the table. That's why I recommend choosing diff frames mode first and mixed mode as a second option. Let's move on. At this stage, you need to calibrate the image tilt. You can think of this as leveling out the image gradient. You can do this manually, but I recommend using the automatic mode here. That's done. Let's move on. At this stage, you need to specify the distance between the camera and the table. You can do this manually, but the automatic approach works very well here. At each of these stages, you should step away from the table so as not to block the view. As you can see, this has been done. We can move on and test the motion detection. You can see that everything is working correctly here. We can also apply the recommended motion detection sensitivity here. The calibration algorithm has suggested a value of 15. We can leave it at that. We can also change this value to a lower one ourselves. It is worth setting it so that it is higher than the noise detection threshold. It has been automatically set to 15, and this seems like a fairly safe value. We can leave it at that. We can also check here the other motion detection modes without recalibrating. As I mentioned earlier, the wide range mode may not detect fingers. The single frame mode additionally detects a hand that is not moving. The other modes detect only moving objects. As you can see here, for example, this is not detected, whereas movement is now detected. We set the diff frames mode again. Moving on, in the final stage we are shown some tools that we can use to further test our configuration. There are two ready-made testers and some ready-made applications that you can also use. These are available free of charge from the Motioncube store. Now, I'll also show you two tools that are very practical, but which should only be used after you've completed the full calibration process. These are tools for quickly detecting the interaction area and fine-tuning the camera parameters. You can use them when a setup you have already configured has shifted, for example, if the camera or projector has moved. This allows you to quickly adjust the parameters. The detection area has been detected again, and we can also fine-tune the parameters once more. Here, we wait for about 15 to 20 seconds. This time is needed for the sensor to stabilize. Good. As you can see, everything has been carried out and calibrated correctly. We can return to the app and test them again. Here, as you can see, there are additional options. This is because we still have service mode enabled. I'll now show you how to use the advanced calibration, which offers additional features. We go back into the advanced settings. We enable service mode. In our case, it's already enabled. We move on to the interactive projection settings. Here we have additional options that we can test. We can preview the motion detection here. As you can see, it is working correctly. The most important thing is that the area inside this yellow trapezium is clear when there is no movement. If additional objects appear in the image here, there are two ways to deal with this. Increase the motion sensitivity setting or perform a recalibration. I'll show you how to do this from this panel. We go into the image source settings here. Click the Depth Stream Calibration button. Here, confirm the table mode and the diff frames mode. You can reset all parameters and recalibrate them with a single click. You can see that everything has been calibrated. Here, we can view the advanced options. In this mode, we have access to manual settings for all parameters. You can experiment with these parameters. You can see what happens. Here, you simply have access to the full source and all the options available. We can even calculate statistics for a given frame of the image. For example, here we can see a standard deviation of 2.92. This indicates that for this sensor, the area approximately 3 centimeters above the table is a zone of reduced stability where noise may occur. We are able to deal with these issues. We detect movement correctly here using additional filters in the software. An important option worth enabling when handing the device over to a customer, that is when it is operating without our supervision, is to enable automatic parameter tuning at startup. By default, this is set so that such automatic calibration takes place 120 seconds after the software starts. The interface waits for this calibration. You can interrupt this calibration using the escape key, but it is worth waiting until the calibration has completed. This ensures the highest quality of detection. At this stage, I'd like to draw your attention to an important aspect of the hardware configuration. First, however, I'll disable Motion Detection Preview. Please note that in this space we have here, that is at the edges of the table, additional artifacts appear, extra interference. Therefore, when working with depth sensors, you need to position the projector image so as to leave a margin of about 2 centimeters on each side. This ensures that all the automatic detection and parameter tuning techniques available in Motioncube will work correctly. That's all there is to setting up the interactive table. Thanks for your attention.